Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and/or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of these imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Today, I'm very excited to have Rich Todd as one such leader. He is the president and CEO of Innovest. Enjoy. Okay, so this is the 8th episode of Leadership with Heart. This is Heather Younger, your host. I'm really excited today to have Rich Todd, President and CEO of Innovest, on my call today. I brought him on because I could sense from my first meeting with him that he was a leader that really focused on his people, on growing his people, on making the right decisions within his firm for the people that are in the firm. And he's also very customer focused. So he's got kind of that in and out look about him and his leadership style. So that's why I invited him on today. And so welcome to the show, Richard.
Thank you, Heather. Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about where you are right now with Innovest, as far as your, the leadership career, the place you're at right now, and what you do there at Innovest.
Well, my role here is CEO. I founded the firm 20 plus years ago with a lady, Wendy Dominguez, and we've grown from just a few of us to close to 50 people today. And I would say that my leadership has changed over time. And where I am today is different than where it was, say, 10 years ago. And I realized that really to take us to the next level as a firm, it had to be about not just me, it had to be about empowering others. And I think it took a lot to get me there. It took consultants and a lot of people beating me on the head with a ball bat. But I realized that if I could bring better people than me, smarter people than me, and empower them, that our firm would grow even more rapidly than it had in the past. And we also learned through that exercise that the best way to empower people is to do so in a culture that embraces them, embraces the client, and ultimately our why as a firm is stewardship. So where I am as a leader is really about, number one, empowering others, and number two, creating stewards or creating a stewardship culture that creates a great place to work, and in the end, creates a great environment for our clients.
And that's the thing that I loved about our discussions originally, is just hearing that you have that two-pronged approach to things. Sometimes we can really operate in a silo and be thinking about, just the customer, just the employee. And the fact that you recognize that there needs to be alignment on both sides in order to really have a fruitful culture, says a lot about you as a leader. So most of us, are the leader we are today because of something. Like, we get a drive, our leadership drive stems from something. Where does that come from for you?
Well, I think some of it is my faith. And I also think being involved in organizations, Christian organizations, Catholic organizations that have been amazing. And I think that they've helped me think about the right way to run a company and the right way to treat people. And we talk here about, what stewardship means. And ultimately it is what we say, men and women for others. And it's like the Jesuits. If you focus on how to pull somebody up, how to make them better, how to be a better team member, how to be a better consultant to the client, ultimately it's going to be a lot better outcome. And I spent a lot of my time developing business, and what I realized was that if I focus on helping somebody else, those referrals will come. So when we go out and talk to others about Innovest, it's more about how can we help them in any walk of life, whether it be helping them get into a school or organization or find their own customer. And ultimately, they're indebted to you, and it feels really good when you help other people, and it's really a win-win in the end.
I love that focus on stewardship. I think it applies really no matter what faith you are, knowing that if you're others focused, your outward focus, then it makes it a lot less about you. When you think about leaders, and even just leaders of organizations like yourself, sometimes the issue ends up being an ego-focused thing, right? Where it's about me and how good I look, and instead of how good do others look, how can I help others look good, and how can I make them feel good and know that we care for them, and it would be the same thing again for the clients that you have. So kudos to you for having, I think, that mindset. And again, as I talk about a lot and write about a lot, this culture idea, this idea of moving that culture forward in a positive way really stems from top down. And so having both you and Wendy be focused in this way on stewardship for both the employee and the client really makes a huge difference. I'm sure for those who are walking in that space every day, in and out of your office, and also to the clients, they kind of have more of a mission focus,
No doubt.
Totally different than maybe you'd see somewhere else.
Yeah, we talk about, we want people that really look at their role here as a vocation, not just a career. And it is something that is a part of them. And I think if you're focused more on your role as a vocation, or the company as a vocation, you're much more interested in pulling people up within the organization and helping them be better at what they do, or better people. And I think sometimes when you're focused on just a career, you're self-centered, and you step on people on the way up. And we often say the best way to get promoted at Innovest is to pull somebody up so that they can fill your shoes as you're promoted. And I don't think that a lot of people look at their future, their career that way, but they certainly do here.
Well, it's interesting. So two things come to mind. One is when I think of the leader with heart, and I talk about a leader that has a lot of emotional intelligence, and that person has high self-awareness, but they also are kind of thinking about other people and how the things that they need, and they're looking to coach and they're looking to inspire. And so I do think that you have a lot of emotional intelligence in that regard. The other thing I think about is, I know that I've had exposure to some of our conversations related to the mentorship program that you have there and that you're looking to elevate. And I think it's unique to find a firm as small as yours contextually. It's not so small in your industry, but definitely smaller contextually. But thinking about how much focus you put on mentorship and this idea of lifting people up, I think it's a key tenet of servant leadership as well. And just thinking about, again, developing the whole person as the CEO of this company, founder of the company. I don't know, it just hits me. It's striking to me, which is exactly why I invited you on. I think just having that focus and it being such a priority for you to be focusing on stewardship, lifting people up, empowering people, growing people, and you put your money where your mouth is. Like, you actually do put the programs and the things in place that make this possible for your people so that they can be raised up and move up in the organization. So yeah, I think it's pretty impressive. So how would you consider your own leadership style? If you could define it or tell us what that is, that'd be awesome.
Well, I think it's about the two things I mentioned earlier. I think it is about stewardship. It is about, you mentioned servant leadership. I think the best way to get somebody's attention and lead them is to serve them. And I would not say that comes naturally. I think it's come over time. And like I said earlier, it really took a consultant to, kind of lay it out for me. If you really want to grow your organization, it has to be more than just about you. And I think as I've matured and as our company's gotten more successful, it's just become a part of the way that I lead. And we tell people here, leadership just isn't about a position and demanding that people follow you. It is about doing things to where they want to be with you. They want to, you're an example for them. And, they will, in the end, they'll lay down for you because they think so much of you and what you've done for them. And we do give people a lot of responsibility here. That's important, to empower others. And there are lots of different ways to compensate people. It's not just about money. And we really believe that responsibility is a great way to compensate someone. And if they're in a position where they have a lot of responsibility within the firm and with clients, and they're paid well, they will never leave. And that position becomes a vocation. The firm becomes a big part of their fabric, and in the end, that's what we're trying to do here.
I think your model is just a beautiful one. You've obviously read my book, and the last laws about compensation and all the other things that you've mentioned up to this point are the things that keep people bonded to you. And I think you're absolutely on a very strong track, continuing to have people want to stay around you. But it's interesting because, again, I just think that not enough leaders are thinking that the idea of leading by fear, leading by compulsion versus what are the things that we can do as organizations and as leaders to make people want to be around us, to make people want to follow, to make them want to go over and above. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about it's not always about the money. It's also about giving them that responsibility, letting them know that I trust them to do the job I've hired them to do, and even more, which is why I give them increasing responsibility. And then they can grow into a spot where maybe they do have, quote unquote, the title that associates with that responsibility. But in the end, if they know that you are putting that faith in them, and that, like you said, you take this idea of stewardship, of vocation very seriously, then they lead. You're leading by example, and they follow you. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and what's great is it's not just about me. We have great leaders here, great stewards, and they're better than I am at leading others and helping others and being that true servant leader. But we used to spend a lot more time on strategy here, and the strategy where we spend the most time on today is really the strategy of our culture. How do you feed it? And our culture is really important to us, and it makes it, a great place to work. Again, that mission and stewardship, and we are very active at, a strategy, developing a strategy to make sure that culture, that stewardship culture is very strong.
I love that. Again, it marks me as a wow for not being a large company, but having that focus. And the fact that you have been, I know, multiple years in a row as one of the great places to work, right? Was it in Colorado, great places to work, or in financial services? I couldn't remember the specific designation, but I know you have lots of recognition in that area because you do great work there for the people.
Yeah, we've won awards nationally for being a great place to work in financial services, and we're proud of that. And it comes through surveying our people, and we're interested in understanding how we can get better. It's a very intensive survey on what our culture's like, what our firm's like, what is it about Innovest that's good or not. And so we started down this path really wanting to be better, and in the end we've been given these awards for being a great place to work in our industry.
I just love it. And the idea of voice of the employee is a really big tenet of everything that I do. And one thing that's interesting too is I know that you are prepared to have the tough discussions. What I find sometimes is we peel back the onion on these surveys, and we really are getting the voice. And then the organizations are a little afraid to broach the topics that may, not be, flowery. They may be ones that you have to dig deeper, and you have to continue to peel back, and you have to flesh it out so that it actually can maybe be more fruitful in the end. And it seems to me that, like when we've had discussions, that you have already and are open to having some of those open round tables where you kind of dig a little deeper in the areas where you're not, maybe shiny and bright, and you want to polish those areas up. You're just, even though your best places to work, you're still saying, okay, well, there's a small gap here. Let's fill this gap. Let's continually improve. And this is what I say, that with this podcast, it's not about being this perfect leader. It's about someone who's focused on continuous improvement. And I think that's the kind of leader that you are, which is exactly, again, why you're on the show. So kudos to you on that. I'm just awesome. I think it's awesome to hear that. Okay, so now I want the listeners to hear from you, maybe about a time where you weren't the best version of yourself. You weren't the best leader that you'd hoped to be. And so then when you recognize what that was, and then how you came out of it. So let's, if you can think of a specific story, be as specific as you can, take us through it, and then kind of how you worked out of it from a mindset perspective.
Well, we like any new company, as we started, it was difficult. We had sleepless nights, and we missed paychecks, and you pay yourself last, and we're trying to get the traction to have an ongoing entity, and there's a lot of pressure, and we ended up growing fairly quickly. And I think that and really back then it was about the founding partners. There were 3 founding partners. It was about us, and but our success kind of fed our ego, and my ego is big, and one of the founding partners and I kind of got upside down with each other on the future of the company. He wanted to take it in a different way, and it was challenging, and it took a lot of resources, and it took away from the culture of our firm. We didn't care about culture back then. We just were trying to survive, do a good job for our clients, but we didn't care that much about what happened here. And it got expensive. There were lawyers involved, and we have other partners here. We had made other partners over time, and they came to me and said, we're not very focused. We didn't have a very good year because you guys are fighting, and I thought, I own most of the firm, and I want to do what I want to do. That was my thought. And if it costs us some money, so be it. I didn't ask anybody about it. I wasn't a very good steward. I wasn't a very good fiduciary. And in the end, that was the catalyst for us to hire some people from the outside to help me with being a better CEO. And we hired a CEO coach, and he was the one that really said, you know what, you need to flatten the firm. We can't have a firm that's all about you. If you really want to grow and have this as a successful firm. And we started doing things to empower people. And we became more thoughtful about our culture. And, we started out doing little things, and today we do big things to feed that culture. But we had to define it. And it was hard. It was hard for me with a big ego to say, what, this shouldn't be just about me. And I think by taking that approach, taking the firm in a different direction, it made me a lot better person. And we've grown immensely since then. And it has little to do with me. It has a lot more to do with others that are here. And it's just it's a great life lesson. But in business, it was probably the biggest lesson that I've ever had.
Yeah, I would bet you that that would be painful. And I know this type of thing happens a lot of times in the startup world where, you want to go scale, you have those original investors are coming in, and the one who got them there can't necessarily always take them further. And it's not always because they don't have the skill set. It's mostly because of the mindset. And in your case, you were smart enough to say, I need some help to kind of get me to a different place from a mindset perspective, so that then I can allow us to grow, because otherwise you may have been a barrier to that growth. But in this case, because you had that, focus, you had that help, and it helped you move past the point in the firm, move past the point where now you're at this, very successful place now. I think it's just an awareness, this ability to be, aware, like, okay, yep, my ego is pretty big. Okay, what am I going to do to put this in check? And I know I'm the barrier. There are a lot of folks who, believe it or not, don't get that. They never do get to that point, which means then they always either have a failing business or they're kicked out of their own business because they just don't have that awareness of who they are and how they're causing the business not to move forward.
Yeah, you can't see the forest for the trees. And I think sometimes having somebody like you, Heather, to come in to help an organization, kind of see the future in a different way. And in the end, I had to pass the reins in some respects to Wendy, and Wendy is a wonderful leader and a great manager, and she could really see. She really had a vision in flattening the firm that I didn't have, and I think it was because of my ego. I mean, she does not. She is truly a servant leader. I had to become one through. I had to be manufactured.
I love the way
she's that way naturally.
It's funny. When I do training or I talk to a group of leaders, a lot of times they'll say, well, do you really think, these people can be more emotionally intelligent? I really think that people are just born that way. And you're either going to be, a caring leader or you're not going to be. And I always tell them, listen, I mean, there are those who kind of innately have some of these kind of empathy traits and their nurturing traits, right? But I do think that it can be taught. You're a perfect example of, why I do the work that I do, from not only just people development side, but the organizational development side. That I truly believe that people and the people inside of organizations can change and can change kind of the cultures for the better. First and foremost, they have to change their mindset. And they have to have an openness to even have someone work on them, because again, it does take a certain type of person to have someone help them and to work on them and on their mindset. You have to be able to set that ego aside and say, I can't do it by myself. So you do have to have that as a starting point, like a desire to do it. But in the end, I do think that people can change. And I think you're a perfect example. The other thing is, I love what you said is, I am manufactured. I had to grow into this, but I have this partner here that does kind of naturally have it in her. And I'm going to defer to her strengths and to her talents and her gifts. I think, again, that's something that a lot of executive suites need to be doing more of too, across the board, is, okay, I'm not strongest in this, but I'm going to try to work on getting better in this, but at the same time, I'm going to defer to these people who are naturally good at this and let them kind of take the reins in that regard.
Yeah, we used to have a mindset that we would focus on somebody's weaknesses to try to make them better. And today, I think we do a much better job of focusing on their strengths. And in a team-based environment like we have, putting together a team that is complementary with strengths. And there are ways that you can get at strengths through testing, but my ego was so big that it was a shock to me that I had any weaknesses. So,
oh, that's a maturity too that comes about with all this too, right? And the peaks and the valleys that happened with the business, and probably some realizations that when you see how other folks' vision is actually panning out in a more positive way, and then you kind of have to just kind of, okay, I guess it wasn't all about me and maybe that person was right. So I think it's great. So here's a question I have for you, because I know that it gets very busy. Everybody has their roles. You're all out with different clients and doing different things. What do you do as really one of the leaders of the firm to really reconnect with your people when you feel like maybe you're getting off track? You're really busy with day to day. You're out at meetings a lot. They're out. What do you do to kind of reconnect with them in a deeper way?
Well, I mean, and as part of the culture strategy, I think if we didn't have a strategy and some formality into this, it may not happen. Last week, we did a philanthropy event, and we have a committee. I'm not on the committee, but they determine an event that a philanthropy event, a charitable giving event that we're going to participate in once a quarter. And so we went to Project Cure. There were I think roughly 25 of us, and we helped sort through medical devices and medicines and packaged up lots and lots of boxes to go all over the country to help the poor. And we've built trails, we've fed the poor, we've painted houses for the elderly. We do things like that every quarter. And that is a great way to connect with people and help somebody that is in need at the same time. That's, philanthropy is a big part of our culture, and it's part of that stewardship culture. Mm-hmm. I also, once a week, I write, it's almost a column, I call it We Love Mondays at Innovest, and I write about all the great things that happened the prior week. And they can be big, they can be small, but I have people that are feeding me just great things that people have done. It could be, as simple as, going to somebody's house to help them with maybe their spouse that's ill, to winning a new client, to meeting somebody that would have influence that could help us. But a lot of it is just the way we help people here. And those people are recognized every week. Even though I'm not here, they're going to get that column from me.
I love it.
There are a series of other things that we do to make sure that we're in touch, especially at the people that are out making sales calls and seeing clients. And we sometimes people complain here about so many meetings, but we believe in a lot of face-to-face interaction.
And I think that there's nothing more important than the sensory experience you get when you're connecting with people face to face. There's just nothing. You can see their micro expressions. You can, just sense their size. You can see the smiles, all of the things. Those are important for you and for the other leaders to see, because that's how you can kind of react, to them. So, so the other thing one of the things that hit me in all of that is, again, it's a small firm. I mean, so there's 50 people. And often what I hear from larger organizations is that they don't, maybe they don't have the time. There's these other things that kind of come into play, and it really distracts them from culture. You have a strategy. You're a 50-person firm, and you have a culture strategy that is really proceduralized. You've got, it's in place every quarter. This thing's going to happen. You may not be the one driving the ship on it, but you are the one who's actually the one you're going present to these different philanthropic events that your firm is helping with people in the community. And I agree with you. I love the fact that your strategy aligned with the stewardship then brings it down one level to now let's go out in the community and actually show what stewardship looks like, and let's see the impact of that, and let's do it together. And I do think that would be a great way to connect the teams. I don't think organizations think of that as much. They think let's do that for them. Let's put these community kind of connected things in place for the people, the front line, but they don't necessarily join their people in those frontline efforts to help the poor, to help the different people in the community. So the fact that you and or Wendy show up to these events as well, are kind of in the trenches with them doing this work, I'm sure that says a lot. It makes sense to me why you're one of the best places to work, because you have this type of thing in place. And then the weekly recognition. I mean, again, you go back to, you read the part of my book, and this is kind of everywhere, that employees feel like if they have not been recognized on a weekly basis, that they never have been recognized. It's as if they forgot about what you just did for them last month. And so the fact that you're putting, it may not be every time, every employee, but the fact that you're putting out that out there every week, and people know they can send it to you, and that they will be validated in what they've done. And that, like you said, it could be small things, it could be big things. Sometimes those small things mean way more. And so because that means someone noticed a small little tweak or change they did in the day to make work better or make the clients happier or whatever it is. And then you're able to go out as one of the founders and the leader of the company to say, here's a great thing that someone noticed, and I'm going to be recognizing whether I'm in the office or not. It's huge. It's huge. So my message to the people listening, who may be from much larger organizations, could be from smaller, know that you can do these little things to connect with your people. It doesn't have to cost anything. Really, it doesn't. It could be your time. So you can just make that decision to say, this is how we're going to keep connected with our people. In the connection, people feel more of a bond to the leaders and to the organization, to its mission. And then that is what helps drive some of that loyalty. So.
Yeah, it almost sounds like we don't work here. but we work really hard. Our people work really hard. I came in this morning at 7. There were people here. I leave at night, usually at 6-ish. There are always people here working. They're very dedicated to our team. They're very, very dedicated to our clients, and we work hard. And but they love it. They love working as a team. We do 360 reviews. They evaluate each other in working as a team, and that a lot of their bonus compensation is based on that 360 review, based on how they how their colleagues are working with each other. So it's not all about fun and games, and ultimately, we earn a very good profit here. We grow, and our people are rewarded for it in many different ways.
Yes, and I think that's even all of it going on at one time. But I think, again, with that, it doesn't really matter all of those things when you have that strategy in place, as you do, where quarterly you do one thing, weekly you do this. You have a cadence or a practice for doing certain things with the team there, and they do with one another, whether you're there or not. That is what culture's about. It's about the things that happen when you're not around, right? And
yep.
So, and the 360s are brilliant. I have tried to get very large organizations to do that, where they tie bonuses and recognition of things to the feedback that's happening. And most do not want to go there. It's hard for most leadership teams or even HR to kind of swallow that idea of like, oh, we're going to do the 360, and based upon that, that's how you're going to have some kind of variable compensation. So I love the fact, again, someone would argue, well, he can do that because number one, he's a founder, number two, it's a smaller organization. But I don't really think it's the size. I think it's the mindset. I think it's the fact that you have a strategy. I think that culture's first. And when you are holding people accountable to live based upon your values and norms and things that you have there, it makes all the difference, whether you're small or big. So hats off to you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this has been amazing. One thing I usually do is I'll ask everybody that comes on to maybe have one parting message. So for those leaders, let's say for a leader that's similarly situated, maybe it's an executive level leader who maybe is struggling to focus more on culture, or to take that time to make sure that they put that in place, kind of maybe someone with a similar journey. What would be kind of your parting message to that leader?
Well, I said it earlier. We used to focus a lot on strategy, and I think, and it's a fairly common quote from Peter Drucker about culture. He said, and Peter Drucker was, an amazing business leader, but he coined that phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And a lot of great things happen with having a well-defined culture. And I really believe that the stewardship culture is something that would work for almost any organization. And we're certainly better for it, and I know other organizations are too.
Awesome. Well, you know what? This has been super refreshing for me. I'm very humbled to have you on the show, and I'm hoping everybody that has listened has taken away some really good tidbits from you, Rich. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, let's say they have a follow-up question for you, what would be the one way maybe they could get a hold of you?
Probably to send me an email, and my email is rtodd@Innovest Inc. INNOV like Victor ESTINC.com, and I'd be happy to share anything, share other tools that we're using, whatever I can do to help them.
As a true steward would say. I appreciate that. Now, also for anybody listening, I will have the bio and his contact information will be in the show notes on our website. So be sure to look for that here in the next day or two. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.